Alright, so today I have for you a book review. Don't know when this will get to be edited because I don't currently have sound on my computer. It also likes to occasionally shut off, just randomly crash. That's been happening for a while. The sound thing is new. So we'll see. I'm gonna keep trying to just turn it off, turn it back on again, see what happens. And my dad's coming tomorrow to try and fix it, but it's not like I'm up to date on editing anyway. So either way, today we have a book review that's of a childhood book that is Whisper of Death by Christopher Pike. So, quick synopsis. So this Christopher Pike, it was one of the big 90s, 80s, 90s teen horror authors. It was like a lot of Christopher Pike, a lot of point horror, a lot of R.L. Stine. Point horror also, had a good amount of Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine books, Diane Ho, Lois Duncan, that sort of thing. But Christopher Pike was one that I read quite a bit as a child. Mostly it was this book and Chain Letter 2 were what I had. I was like 7 years old. My mom, I was homeschooled when I was in second grade, and my mom kind of helped my grandmother with her kind of daycare thing in town, and so she'd bring me and my brother there, and I was 7, so I would go downstairs and read. And this was one of the books that I would read, would be Whisper of Death by Christopher Pike, which is inappropriate for a 7-year-old, I will say that. This book, so this is about this girl named Roxanne, and she gets this new boyfriend and she finds out she's pregnant. So she goes to go get an abortion. As they're coming back, she ends up not getting the abortion. She walks out. As they're coming back, they realize that everybody's gone except for a certain number of other people. There are a couple other groups of, there's about, I think there are like 5 or 6 of them total. Turns out that they are all involved in some way with this girl, Betty Sue, who died recently. And then they find a bunch of stories that are very obviously about them, and they all start dying off in ways similar to the stories. It's a fun book. Like I said, inappropriate for a 7-year-old, so if you're 7 years old, don't read it. Anyway, like I said, there are definite nostalgia points here. I don't think if I had read this a million times when I was 7 years old, I would love it as much. But it's like I said, I read this over and over and over again. I remember sitting in my grandma's basement, binge eating fruit snacks, reading Whisper of Death and Chain Letter 2, and a couple of R.L. Stine books. I think like The Prom was one of them. There's one about this guy in a gorilla suit. I don't remember, but just in reading this book over and over and over again. Like I do want to make a video sometime of my whole kind of horror evolution, but this was definitely an early part of that. So slipping into this book is like going home, which is a little concerning. I know I mentioned more than once that reading Stephen King feels like home. It's like Stephen King is home. And so is Whisper of Death by Christopher Pike. So there's that. There are some fun characters. There was kind of a weird amount of depth to them. If you can get past, there's this kid, like he's the bad boy, and his name is Helter Skater. So if you can get past that, it's kind of fun. It was like this girl's boyfriend's name is Pepper. There are some questionable naming choices, but if you can get past Helter Skater, you'll be good. But there was, like I said, there was a weird amount of depth to that. Yeah. There were some interesting things in here. Like I said, it's very dark. There's beyond the abortion thing, beyond all this stuff, there's rape talked about, gruesome deaths, man. There is I don't want to give spoilers, but there's apart from the original suicide of Betty Sue, there's another suicide. It gets interesting, and the little stories in here, it's really gory. There are some pretty dark bits in here. The little stories are just so weird. Pike gives you the stories, and they're normally they're about a page front and back, and they're just written so interestingly. I do want to read a little bit of the first paragraph of one of them. This is Soda Raider Goes to Sleep. Soda Raider was court jester to Queen Beetle. Soda would tell his queen stories while she sat on a magnificent chair and sewed with her needles. She sewed dresses and cloaks, and sometimes they ended up on the fire and turned to smoke. Queen Beetle was wonderful, and Soda Raider was sometimes disrespectful. She told him, "Your stories have no rhyme, no sense of time, and that is the worst of crimes." So then she sent Soda into the woods to think of a story that would deliver the goods. She told him he had best get better or she would tickle him with a feather. And they're just really weird, kind of nonsensical sounding stories in there. And like I said, like there's one of those for every death, and it's very, very interesting kind of how they end up playing out in the real world. Yeah, like I said, like there's some really dark bits too. Like I said, there's the rave that it is gory. I mean, like that's the thing with your early 90s teen horror, is that it does get gory. And I know Christopher Pike loves burning people alive. There's another instance of that in Chain Letter 2, which I have not reread in a while, but is on. I've got stacks of books to read soon over by my desk, and it's on top of one of them. But there's some of that. Some guy shoots himself in the dick. Also, there's that. But it's interesting. And overall, like this rating is so nostalgia heavy for this book. But I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars, just because of that nostalgia factor to it, man. I love it. I love it so much. It's a fun time.